Hi everybody, welcome to November Supper Club. We are looking at the different practices, spiritual practices during this season, and
for the 7 months.
For these 7 months, and we'll look at 6 different what we call streams of spiritual practice out of the Christian faith. And maybe the most well-known, or the one you might naturally move to first, is prayer, and we thought we would start with that. So,
practice of prayer.
Yeah. What is prayer?
What is the practice of prayer? The spiritual discipline of prayer, I think, can be a loaded term, and it's multifaceted, I suppose. But I like to think of prayer as the way that we put ourselves in the presence of God. And so there are different ways to pray, and there are different reasons to pray, and aspects of prayer, but really fundamentally to put ourselves in the presence of God in a way that creates a greater awareness of God in our lives and God in the world around us.
Mm-hmm. And out of that come deeper relationships with not only with God, but with other people. Mm-hmm. This was similar to what we talked about. All these spiritual
disciplines,
disciplines do this, right? They help us in our relationships with others and just getting to know ourselves better.
Right.
And I want to come back to the loaded piece, because I think that's so that the sense of, especially prayer, as in a Christian community, it feels like something you should do, and you ought to be doing more. And there's just a lot of weight to this one that we'd like to, in the next few minutes, maybe broaden our understanding of prayer and move a little away from that shouldness of it and make it something that maybe you're hungering for.
Yeah, here's a topic that thousands and thousands and thousands of pages and tomes have been written about, and we're going to do it in 10 minutes.
That's right, that's right.
Here's a cursory idea about prayer.
So there are some ways you can think about it, and one of them would be individual prayer versus community. So let's talk about that one.
Okay. What is an individual prayer?
Individual prayer is kind of the spine, I think, of prayer. We've been joking about this one, of what do we want to talk about with individual prayer. But I do like that idea, that that is the spine, and community prayer. It centers you, and then the community kind of prayer is maybe putting the ribs on that and broadening that. I find that for community prayer, for me, took a little getting used to, and getting used to being able to talk out loud and in front of others, and then my performance side kicks in, and all of that, all the things that should be.
Self-consciousness of praying aloud.
Right.
What I like about community prayer is community prayer are the liturgies that we write, that we pray together from the bulletin on Sunday morning. So we do a collective corporate confession. We do the Lord's Prayer together. There are ways of praying as a community. I think the bigger challenge is to learn how to pray as an individual. I think people feel uncomfortable with it, or can feel uncomfortable with it, and don't know exactly how to do that, or we should know how to do that, but we don't.
So you mean by yourself?
Yeah. Praying by oneself.
Yeah, I think for me, because I tend to do that without words, even by myself, I'm not praying with words.
So here's another mode then.
Right.
A way, silence, and praying in silence, or praying with words.
That's another kind of tension or spectrum of all this. And I tend to, not exclusively, but tend to lean toward resting in the presence of God. But there's times, especially when I'm going through a difficult time, or I'm worried about someone, that I need to speak it, and I can fumble through it, but it's more natural then, because it's coming from such a deep place. But in my kind of day-to-day practice, I start to feel, I agree, that's
you run out
hard.
Of words?
Yep, or it feels awkward. Here's an example. This is a funny, I'm totally sidetracking here, but I went to visit someone in the hospital today, and she was unconscious, and I prayed with her, and I'm praying out loud. I'm just there's no one else in the room, and then I got awkward with my words with it. It wasn't, and I thought, just sit and hold her hand in this moment, and so I ran out of words. Words are an interesting part of
Yeah,
prayer.
right. Well, and speaking of words, I find that praying with words, a good option is to read other people's words, to read books of prayers and read beautifully crafted prayers. Some people are so gifted at writing them that we don't have to come up with the words ourselves. Back to the corporate confession or things like that.
You've been very helpful to me in that. Not only is it just lovely to read other people's words or to use their words, you become a better prayer. Your words come more naturally. We learn that
by
insight.
praying other people's prayers.
I found that to be true, and you brought that to my life. That was really helpful.
I'm glad.
Yeah, brought something. Finally, brought something.
And the third one is praying with the mind or praying with the body.
Yes.
I think, especially as Presbyterians, we're very comfortable praying with the head, praying with the mind. We want to think. We want to have our mental, full capacity in our prayer life. But there are other ways of praying and being in our bodies, bowing, kneeling, hand movements, breath prayer.
Just practicing how that will change what comes from you when you pray like this versus down, bowed.
Right.
It's a powerful, where your body is matters and how it's positioned.
Yep.
And then this is a big piece of broadening prayer, I think, too, is the chance to think about prayer beyond simply sitting in whatever posture you're in, but beyond sitting still to walking prayer.
Yes.
I think,
like walking the labyrinth is prayer.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be using words, you're just walking. And monks used to walk the cloister.
Mm-hmm.
Walk the perimeter of the cloister as prayer.
Yep. Laura just got back she went to a monk. I said, that's the cloister. That's where they would walk in the square and pray and meditate while they do it. So
that's neat.
Yep. What's the benefits of prayer?
Well, I think when we're intentional about the practice of prayer, if we're saying, I'm going to be intentional about practicing prayer, that we are intentional about building a relationship with God, and that we're saying this is important to deepen my understanding of God, and this is a way in. And once you start praying, you kind of continue a conversation with God. There's an ongoing conversation.
Like any relationship. It takes time.
Yeah.
You got to invest in it.
Right.
You got to spend the time to get something out of it. And I think, a lot of this is metaphorical language, but in order to hear God, to listen, just like with any relationship, you got to spend the time listening. And
right.
And the other one that in terms of benefits that we were talking about, was just the way prayer can soften your heart. If you're struggling with someone, it's about the best thing that I know to shift my thinking, because if I'm in my head only, I just keep saying why I'm right.
In a relationship with someone you're angry at.
Right. If I'm just chewing that bone, I just keep doing the same old thing. Mm-hmm. And there's something about prayer that can interrupt that. And often we'll even, again, maybe it's metaphor, but I hear a different voice telling me to, but this, or they're struggling with this. And I go, okay, all right, fine.
Yeah, I find it very difficult to continue to be angry at someone or to hate my enemies if I'm praying for my enemies.
Right. Praying for them.
Literally praying for someone, that is very hard for me. It changes our hearts, which is the purpose.
Yep.
So what are some obstacles to praying, to learning how to practice prayer?
Yeah. Certainly these days, being overly scheduled and so busy that we can't find the time to do it. And even though we know maybe a lot of you know the adage, I'm too busy not to pray. And I do think that's true, that the busier your day, it's going to go better if you'll take
Martin Luther used to spend, he said if it was a busy day, he'd spend 3 hours in prayer.
Just 3 hours.
In the morning.
That's right. So that's certainly one. It's just finding the schedule and the time to do it. Obviously things that help are setting a set time. I think you used to spend time in the mornings, most mornings, setting aside so that you get into a habit, just like anything else.
It's a true habit.
Okay, this is what I do now. but
Yep.
it's tricky.
It is. I think another, or maybe that's connected to that, is just quiet, finding quiet.
Yeah.
And we avoid the quiet.
Yeah.
And it's one thing about being by yourself. It's another thing to be choosing quiet and intentionality. And I think you brought up the point that it can bring up strong emotions,
Yeah.
feelings that we don't want to feel when we actually sit still and create space to listen and to
Yeah.
be present.
I think
It's
I will blame busyness all the time, but I think what really goes on when I'm
Yeah.
avoiding something is
It's
I
avoidance.
just don't, I'm just on the mood. I don't want to
Right,
sit there.
right, because there's something really going on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but essential. And I think another obstacle is that we just don't feel like we know how to do this.
Right.
And we
Don't wanna
we
do it
think
wrong.
that there's
Yeah,
right. We
yeah.
think that there's a way to do it right.
Yeah.
And if I don't know how to pray, then
Yeah,
I don't pray.
right. And so what the antidote to that is to just do it, right?
And to
just
try some options. So
Yeah,
we have
right.
some.
We do.
We have some ideas for you to choose for this next month. And what we'd like you to do, we're going to give 4 suggestions, right?
Okay,
4
yep.
different ways to pray. And these are all really ways to pray. So we're going to give you a variety. The first one is called the Jesus prayer. And this is a prayer from ancient times, probably the 11th century, earlier than that.
Sure.
Something like that. And it goes like this. Let me guess here. Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. That's the really short
right.
version of it, right? Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Or you could pray, Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. And that's a prayer that for generations people have prayed as just a mantra,
Yep.
something that just becomes part of their thinking or their unconscious. And so you can commit to praying that, to writing it on sticky notes or something and putting them around and reminding yourself to have that in the back of your mind.
And I'll skip the second one just because related to that would be choosing just a word. So
Oh, that's good.
what's lovely about that one is it's connecting you to all that history.
Mm.
How many people have prayed the Jesus prayer through the century, and you feel a sense of solidarity with him. But you could also just do a phrase of any kind that matters to you, or just a word, peace, God, Jesus, Lord have mercy. There's different phrases, and just do that. You can just do it, you can think about it just on the exhale, so it's called the breath prayer, where and then do peace, have it going through your mind, and do that for 5 minutes. So it's got
But
this...
it is that sitting still breath prayer,
Yeah.
though, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, focusing on a word or a
Right.
phrase.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that structure can sometimes give us, I sometimes do that for a little bit and then have the more open space to have a conversation with God, but by that point I've centered myself enough.
Yeah, that's good, that's centering.
Because if I go straight into this, I feel anxious and then I just get up. So that helps.
Okay, so one would be praying the Jesus prayer. That's an ancient prayer. Second would be a breath prayer, maybe choosing a word to pray. Third is a gratitude journal. And we'd encourage you to daily write down 5 things for which you are grateful. And look at themes at the end of the week. But every day, morning, night, whenever, choose 5 things that you are grateful for from that day. And they can be really simple, but it changes one's heart and mind, for sure. And what's the last
And
one?
then the last one would be what we talked about, the difference between sitting still or going for using your body. So a walking prayer.
Prayer walk.
Either you come over to the labyrinth here, or just walking in your neighborhood. It's really about the intentionality
Yeah.
of being in the presence of God. So it's different than walking your dog around the block and saying hi to the neighbors
Right.
and things like that. It's
Very
the
intentional.
intentionality and the focus of being present to God in that moment.
So we will write these down and have them on the video and for your supper club captains.
And the idea is they practice this for the month, and then when you come
Practice
back
it for the month.
over dinner or however you're meeting, kind of check in on how it went. what you
Yeah,
liked.
yeah. And maybe talk about prayer tonight. How
Yes.
maybe your feelings about that
Right.
and thoughts.
That's great.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thanks. Have a good night.